Welcome to Quick Classroom Mysteries. You must be the new junior detectives. Let us see how well you can put your newfound skills to the test. You'll be working closely with our best detectives, Inspector Felix and Detective Attler. Because you're new detectives, we'll need your help in the future. Subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of future cases. Now to the case. Detective Attler handed 4 folders to Inspector Felix. These are the 4 witnesses the uniformed officers picked up after the North Smithville car chase yesterday afternoon. The dash cam on the police car picked up these 4 people standing in their yards as the car went by. The people being chased tossed drugs out their window to who we believe was their contact. The drugs landed on the grassy curb, and by the time the next police car passed by 2 minutes later, the drugs were gone. We need to interview each person and work out who was the accomplice. Inspector Felix and Detective Attler sat down across from a tall, muscular, tanned man. His right arm was covered in tattoos of swords, skulls, fire, and blood. His left arm had outlines of similar pictures, yet to be completed by the tattoo artist. The man had a steely look in his face. His body language showed he did not want to be here, and did not want to answer the questions. "Please tell us your name," Inspector Felix asked. "Eli Wells," he responded curtly. "Well, Eli, can you please tell us what you were doing on the Sunday between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m.? Detective Attler asked, staring down the fierce man. "Like I already told the other officers, I was in my front yard washing my car. I did not realize this was a police concern." "Not against the law, is it?" he said challengingly. "Not at all, Eli," Inspector Felix stated. "We are more interested if you saw the police chase what happened in your street that afternoon." "I did. I saw that green car speeding past and a cop car behind them, lights and sirens." "What about it?" Eli asked abruptly. "The police dash cam vision shows the occupants of the car tossing something out their window. Whatever it was landed near your property." "Do you know what they threw?" Inspector Felix mentioned. "No," Eli said, annoyed. "After the cars passed, I continued to wash my car. I then went inside and got drunk. Look, search my house if you want to, but I had no idea what they threw out the window, and I don't care either." Detective Attler and Inspector Felix left the room. "You can send him home," Inspector Felix said to a uniformed officer in the hall. "He is not involved," Inspector Felix said to Detective Attler. He nodded in agreement. In the next interview room, they looked at a 70-year-old woman sitting quietly at the table. Her hands weaved in and out, mimicking the motions of knitting. "I knit when I'm nervous," she said, making an effort to still her hands. "But the officer said I was not allowed to bring my knitting with me." "Well, hopefully we won't be here too much longer, Mrs. Detective Attler said, reassuringly. "Mrs. Hanson," the old lady finished off Detective Attler's incomplete sentence. "You know, dearie, you are far too pretty to be a police officer," Mrs. Hanson directed at Detective Attler. "Thanks," Detective Attler stated. "You should have been a model." Mrs. Hanson cut Detective Attler off. Detective Attler and Inspector Felix looked at each other and just smiled. "Mrs. Hanson, do you remember what you were doing on the 23rd between 2 and 3 o'clock? Inspector Felix took control of the conversation. "Oh, sweetie, you'll have to be more specific than that. I can't remember what I did this morning. Can you give me more information?" Mrs. Hanson replied. "Do you remember a police car chase in your street a few days ago?" Inspector Felix asked. "Oh, yes, I remember that. This dark-coloured car was speeding down the road. It was so dangerous. What if a small child had been on that road? Young people these days only care about themselves. They—" "Thanks, Mrs. Hanson," Detective Attler cut her off. "Do you remember seeing anything thrown from the window of the car? It landed near your property." "Let me think. I was gardening, so I did not have my glasses on. I find that if I have them on when I garden, they get dirty. It is easier for me to leave them inside on the kitchen bench. When I went in after gardening, they were right where I left them, 1 foot to the left of the kitchen sink." "How good is your eyesight without your glasses, Mrs. Hanson?" Detective Attler asked. "Not very good at all, sorry. If I took them off now, I would not be able to see you clearly across the table. Thankfully, gardening doesn't require good long-distance vision," Mrs. Hanson stated. "Thanks for coming in, Mrs. Hanson. I will have an officer see you out safely. Have a good afternoon." Detective Attler and Inspector Felix stood and left the room. Walking to the 3rd room, Detective Attler took in the scene. A middle-aged woman sitting at the table, staring at social media on her phone. She noticed the officers walk in and shut off her phone. Sorry, she stated. Just checking up on what the kids have been doing on social media. No problem, Inspector Felix said. Can you confirm for us what your name is? Margaret Hale, she said, smiling back at Inspector Felix. Margaret, do you remember anything happening on the 23rd? Inspector Felix asked. Oh, yes, Margaret said. I was playing games on my phone when the dog started barking at the mailman. He always does that. I had to go out to the front yard to restrain him, while the mailman put the mail in our letterbox. Really? Asked Inspector Felix, barely concealing his surprise. What mail did you get? Just some bills and junk mail. Can't get away from bills, can we? Margaret said, laughing slightly. After getting the mail out of the box, I noticed a car coming racing down the street. It was being chased by a police car. Did you happen to notice anything being tossed out the car window? Detective Attler asked Margaret. Yes, Margaret said excitedly. Leaning in, she continued. I saw my neighbour Eli. Have you met him yet? Detective Attler and Inspector Felix nodded. Well, I saw him catch the drugs and throw the package in his car before the next cop car arrived. That is interesting, Detective Attler said, indicating to Inspector Felix to step outside. Send the other witness home. Inspector Felix told the officer standing by the door. Do you want to do this arrest? Inspector Felix asked Detective Attler. She nodded and walked back into the third interview room. Why was Margaret Hale arrested? Pause now to discuss with your class. Margaret Hale was arrested because she said that she was collecting the mail after it had been dropped into her letterbox on the day of the car chase by the postman. This is impossible, as the car chase and dumping of the drugs at the escaping car window occurred on the Sunday the 23rd. The mail is not delivered on a weekend, but instead during the week. You have been excellent detectives. We will need your help in the future to help solve cases. Subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of future cases. Thanks for watching.